Hi guys, Paul Seils here. Thanks for joining us for this session on rewriting the programming of the matrix. Got a very special guest with us, Greg Simmons. Greg, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share.
It's great, and thank you for having this conversation. Thank you for what you do in the world as well. I've done a couple of sessions with you, which has been super interesting, and we've been through an interesting period of time, particularly in the last 4 years, and along the lines of like what's presented as far as in the collective, as far as what would you call it? I guess post-traumatic stress disorder is concerned, and there's multiple levels and dimensions that are sort of occurring at the moment as well. So, and like I said, I did some very powerful sessions with you as well. I do appreciate your time and your contribution to me in that regard. I want you to just kick off first and give me a little bit of background, give us a little bit of background about how you got started in this and how you describe what you do in this regard.
The background's not that interesting. I haven't had any, like my wife, I haven't had any passed over experiences. I originally wanted to do God's work when I was 12, but I turned away from that for a long time because I wasn't impressed by what the guys with the white collars on were telling us in the school assemblies, that we would go to hell if we weren't behaving ourselves. So probably at a later stage in my life, I decided that I needed to explore the opportunity to see what healing was all about, to understand how energy worked, to understand why I'd been so traumatized in my own way by myself.
Yeah.
So this,
so we all have, there's the trauma that we've experienced personally in this lifetime. There's intergenerational trauma that's passed on. And I think this is the exciting thing about this conversation for those that are willing to have the courage to be able to heal, like the transformation, the future for humanity is the transformation of the individual, and then having people be given the tools to be able to heal in that regard. And I think that's the interesting thing, is that we're not present to our trauma either, or we're not present to the programs that we're running. And then after we've had these couple of sessions, I'm looking at everything that I'm thinking or I'm feeling or whatever, and I'm just like, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? Yeah.
Absolutely. And knowledge is so necessary for us as to our influences, how our choices influenced. And with those choices, there's always an energy and a feeling and a particular wave train of thought coming at us. And I see that as a reaction. If we're in the reaction, well, it's usually based on fear, not nail-biting fear, but fear of that's coming from the past. And a lot of this is, as you said before, intergenerational. And then in early childhood, we're trying to figure out how to present ourselves to be acceptable, or how to be so that we're not attacked, or how to be so that we're able to stay safe, if you like. So, pardon me, that intergenerational influences in our parents. Now, some were really great parents that still carried programs.
Yes.
Some of them were so nice, they were rescuers. And they were self-sacrificial, and they can pass that on too.
Rescuers, enablers, codependent.
Yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And some were downright frustrated because of their early childhood experiences, and they carried a lot of anger or fear or frustration as to how to go about interacting or to be accepted by their children or by others around them. It's huge, really. This is such a broad spectrum understanding that we need to actually address and be patient with ourselves to begin to understand. Because those influences are unique to each one of us. Absolutely unique. So categorization, qualifications, quantification, it doesn't work when you're looking at trying to assist somebody with their own programming.
Yes.
I think it's most important to be able to listen. Pardon me, but listen as the observer, where you're not in judgment.
Yes.
So listening from the point of view of that you're actually starting to assess energies.
Mm.
And this is where we all need to be.
Are you talking about like
observer.
reading people's energy energy
absolutely.
fields? Yeah.
Well, the main communication that we have is through the human energy field.
Yes.
And that was actually scientifically validated a long time ago.
Mm.
And so we might be trying to express something and keep a smiling face, but underneath we might be feeling differently. And so that'll be translated in the mix. So there'll be a frequency coming from the human energy field about how you're feeling about somebody, say, as an example. And you're trying to be nice, but there's something in there that makes you feel very, very uneasy.
Yes.
So there's all these influences, and then that other person's energy field. We got into this topic pretty quickly, but I was going to talk about other generalizations. But the person that's being interacted with, they've got triggers for their own insecurities, for their own feeling of lack, for their own hurt, if you like.
Yes. Well, I think the worthy program seems to be a bit of a common theme. Great.
Oh, very much so.
It runs it particularly like the feminine has the beauty wounds, the not enough wounds, the not enough programming in the masculine. There's always like that program seems to be prolific. But what I wanted to talk to you about today is around this is like how you work with people in this regard, and then also getting present to like the purest aspect and the holistic part of, or the divine part of the self, and then having people get present to what is a program and what isn't.
Well, and pardon me, I'm just getting over a flu that I had for a fair few weeks, and I've still got a bit of a cough, so pardon me. So with this, I listen at first to see the story of the person, what they're feeling, what they're dealing with in the way of situations that they themselves may have created. So I look and sense and feel and go deeper with them, but I've also told them that I'm here to look at their programming.
Yes.
It's all about programming. And there's no opportunity to actually, well, there is, but we don't want to feel like a victim. We want to be empowered. To be empowered, we have to connect to higher self, true self, that carries that vibration and that expression of non-judgment in thoughts and empowerment, which means non-fearing expression.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And it can be done from that peaceful feeling that we actually are entitled to feel.
Well, this is interesting as well, Greg, because sorry to interrupt you there, but
you're right.
And I remember making the comment to you as well. There's like a lot of us that sort of know this from the level of mind, but the cliche about the difference between knowing the path and actually walking the path, or the embodiment of the path, is something else entirely.
Absolutely. This is where we need to be able to access true self, real self. So in sessions that I've worked with, and this is what I want to share, because all of humanity is subject to this to some degree or another.
Yes.
Maybe not all of it, but a lot of it. In that we need to know what we are, what we're part of. Like people go into the forest or go to a really beautiful place where everything's relaxing, there's beautiful music, etc., good food. And usually there will be a sense of peacefulness unless somebody is really heavily traumatized, right? Then it's another story. But that peacefulness is actually the feeling of that energy that sustains and creates all organic life. Now, we hear that all the time. Creator is everywhere. Prime creator is the force behind all living things. Well, it's true. So we want to access that feeling. We want to access that vibration to be able to be in sync. The gift that we have as an individual, as an individuation of light. Now, that's not New Age stuff. This is very real. So we want to be able to feel that we're part of the creation. Feel that when we look at an animal, a bird, and I've got people that I've worked with that actually talk to them and are spoken back to by flowers, even horses, dogs, plants. Just as an aside, Rupert Sheldrake proved the feelings in plants by equipment that he used to, and that's been done for 30, he's been doing that for 30 years, and there's so many others. But coming back to what I was saying, it's the connection to that life force energy, which in actual fact, your interdimensional higher self is totally in alignment with. So there's a go-to here for us. There's an authority here for us that can guide us, but we have to be able to feel it. We have to be able to be intuitively in alignment with it.
Yes.
Now, that's a big job. That's a huge job. And this goes back to what you're saying, actioning what you would like to change. So there's an opportunity to be in communication with your higher self.
Yes.
To ask for the things that you require in terms of editing of your judgmental trauma, conflict shock imprints. And I've done that so many times it doesn't matter. Because sometimes you have to look at a conflict shock imprint to let go of a fracture in your early childhood or later. And it takes a little while sometimes to realise that you're capable of that.
Yeah.
In other words, sometimes there's such a resistance by the brain that doesn't know what to do with that information or doesn't trust that information to be able to start to open up and realise, because I work with that, right, by calling up a change and then ask the person to review that conflict shock imprint, I'm introducing them to their ability to see differently in their memory timeline, right? So I have to be patient, I have to be still, and I have to also, here's belief where belief comes in. I have to believe that they're capable, and I do.
Yes.
Because we are. So I hold that frequency. Now, I'm just a very normal person, right? I mean, I'm really normal. I'm just your average Joe as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So
Normal person doing extraordinary things.
Well, if I can do it, others can do it. This is who and what we actually are. We're supposed to be those creators, those that bring into play harmony in whatever they're creating.
Yes.
And so because of the way we were intimidated and dominated and controlled over, say, 10,000 years or so, we've got an enormous backlog of survival and trauma in the DNA. And then in comes judgment because there's a fear of not surviving.
Yes.
And so non-survival brings in compliance.
Yeah.
And what happened in that last 4 years? How many people complied?
Yes.
And actually were damaged by it.
Absolutely.
Because of information.
Absolutely. And then particularly when that trauma is, or coercion or manipulation or whatever you want to call it, is getting projected onto humanity.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I can't understand about it as well is, like, there's obviously and a lot of other people, including General Michael Flynn and Dr. Robert Malone, talk about fifth generational warfare that's sort of being projected onto us as a technology as well. I'm just like, I think a lot of us were really dumbfounded by the acquiescence and the complicity aspect. And now retrospectively, there's this cognitive dissonance there. It's like, why are more people not more upset about what happened?
Well, people forget when they go back into their comfort zone. So it's like, I'm all right now. Okay, everything's past. That's done and dusted. but they don't realise there's an evolutionary leaping process here for the human, or an opportunity for an evolutionary leap here in the human species, or for the human species. So that's not looked at, and it's not often spoken about, because we're focusing on, if you like, the opposition. Now, we have to actually rein that in sometimes to a degree, so that we can focus on that which sustains us. And I'm not being religious. I'm talking about prime creator's energy, your higher self's energy, because when we're that, we can be like the Earth Mother and be an expression of harmony, harmonic energy, if you like, to present our particular gift. It might be singing, it might be drawing, it might be food, it might be administration, it might be finance, it might be anything. But that fairness, that justice, that equality that is in that person giving their gift to humanity, if you like, or the group that they work within, is imperative for unity consciousness. If we don't have that, how can we proceed?
Yes.
Because if we're not in unity, if we are judging, we're in trouble, because we're looking at differences and we're in fear of misconception.
Well, this is interesting as well, Greg. And again, to a lot of us, including myself at some points in time, non-judgment occurs to be very idealistic and very difficult to remain in non-judgment, particularly when your personal health and well-being and financial situations are under threat. There are a lot of other people that are still very angry and incomplete about what happened, and justifiably. So yeah.
So they've been triggered, and they haven't been able to understand what their greatest enemy is in reality, and that's their mind control programming in their own thought processes. So a lot of people, when you know about this, a lot of people don't realise that a lot of the time their thoughts that they're thinking are not their natural thoughts. They're not their actual thoughts. They're other people's perceptions about you, or your perception about yourself. And these are interfering with that feeling of being in the moment, with that feeling of being part of the energy that I was just talking about earlier on. So unless you're aware of that, then you're oftentimes, nearly always, going to believe a lot of those programs, which are reactions, which repeat themselves all the time, by the way. And that's how I usually introduce in a session. I say, what troubles you the most in life? What is it that you feel the most common feeling that actually puts you off balance, or makes you angry or sad or frustrated or sick? And that's a program.
Yes.
So then I start to go from there. I know you didn't ask me that question.
No, it's good. I was going there.
Yeah, I start to go to that program, and it takes a while for somebody to understand that reaction is actually a program. It's a hard drive triggered, and I won't use the word response, because it's not a response, it's a reaction to whatever is in their environment and whatever is being triggered in the way of their insecurities. So really, to be able to respond to our situations, we need to know about that, so that we can work our way to being strong enough to be able to go, hang on a minute, I've got to let that go. That's actually an old program. I know what that is. I can identify that. I just have to center myself again. I might do qigong, or I might do breath work, or I might go and sit under a tree, whatever. I went to hug a tree about 20 years ago, and I could listen to things, and I was just hugging this tree, and I was saying, I care about you, and it told me to go away.
Right.
Because my energy wouldn't have been where it needed to be. I'm serious about that. That's just a funny thing. Like, I've had so many experiences, it doesn't matter. But Um, when you start to understand that you're programmed, well, that's the opportunity that you have to go, well, hang on a minute. Who am I? What am I really?
Yes.
It's not the identity that you've given yourself that you want to present to the world and present to people so that they see you in a certain way. And then you get really pissed off if they don't see you that way or they don't accept you that way. We feel very, very angry or frustrated or sad.
Yes.
So that identity oftentimes is a real problem for us, because we need to be able to accept and see as the observer how people are coming towards us. What's their intention? What do they need? Are they just being friendly? Do they need to, are they going to try and take from us? You can sense those energies. It's your intuitive ability. You know that. I know that. So many people know that. So when we start to look at intuitive awareness, we use that to actually resolve, if you like, the situations that we're in. So as we make wise choice, which we call free will, by the way, not affected by programmed thought. So it's free will, the I am, if you like. And so so many times we react with the programs and we finish up exactly where we were before, or we go deeper into it, or we lessen it off, depending on the challenges that are in our life at the time, or what energies are being directed at us. Because to me, again, I feel that the knowledge of programs of programming effects on us is huge. If we address this, we know what battle we're actually up against within inside of ourselves. We can identify a lot of the battles outside of ourselves.
Yes.
And it's hard to see some of the stuff that's coming at us from the astral plane that is being directed at us to lower our frequencies, if you like, just putting it in a mild nutshell.
Yes.
I've seen etheric implants, dark beings, or present, etc., which I actually assist people.
Well, that was the other part I was going to ask you as well, is like, how do you differentiate between what is, like, what's a program and what's an entity? Because I have experienced people with entities previously, or different like energies that they've taken in. And also for myself as an empath, I also have a tendency to be very sensitive to energies, and I have to be careful around what energies on. If I don't have my boundaries, or I'm not protected, I end up sort of wearing it, and then all of a sudden my energy, my frequency will drop, and I'll just like, I'll be, where did that come from? For no apparent reason.
Okay, well, they're there. What I feel is a good statement is that your connection, and connection to source energy, I mean, your connection is your protection. Because your connection raises your frequency of your energy field, right? And so then there's less chance of attachments. They will try, and they will look for vulnerability, because there's a lot of manipulation that comes through from those interdimensional realm in that lower fourth dimension. A lot of influence to actually trigger your. Now, some people might laugh at this, but it's real to me, because I experienced it so many times when I'm working with people and had to remove what was influencing. And then the person becomes more aware of what was influencing without fear. So it's all about the freedom is really not feeling fear.
Yeah.
That's it. And so if you don't feel fear, you're free to make wise choice for yourself. You're free to end a relationship. You're free to continue a relationship because you know that that person is walking the same path as you. Or there are differences that you hadn't seen before. And when you're still enough and you've looked at your own programming, you'll see everybody else has got it. So we don't need to have relationships where there's reaction versus reaction.
Yeah.
And it's okay when everything's flowing and it's really good. But in a lot of relationships, when people are tired, when they're in difficulty of this or that or the other.
Stress.
Yeah. And it usually comes down to reaction versus reaction.
Yeah.
Not all the time in every situation. I generalise, but each individual situation is different.
Mhm.
So, and I've worked with a lot of people. I won't take two people together and work with them, because then there's a scoreboard. We don't need scoreboards. We don't need someone trying to defend themselves or attack the other one, or just give up because they can't get there to be understood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll always work with individuals as individuals, looking at their programming so that they can look at how they're interacting. Are they reacting, or is that other person, what are they reacting to? What are they feeling? So you're feeling like not sure that that person is telling the truth, that other person is telling the truth. And it's like, I'm a bit skeptical about that person telling the truth. Or this is, say, your husband or your wife or your this or your partner. And it's like there's this vibration of non-acceptance in one sense, right? That's what's coming out of the human energy field. That other person can pick that up and translate it, but not really know what they're reacting to. And then they'll feel it, and it'll be like they'll react back again because of, no, you don't believe me, or you don't trust me, or you this, that, which is reasonable sometimes because they don't need to. But it's the interaction of the human energy field that's most important, and the influence of the subconscious on that is huge. So we need to clean out the subconscious, edit it, see the things that actually influence us in a negative way, in a reactionary way, in a judgmental way. And that goes back to divide and conquer.
Yes.
Patriarchal societies.
Mm-hmm.
Male against female in one sense. Two different things altogether, a male and a female. But in reality, that divided the hemispheres in human beings.
Mm-hmm.
It divided, the ability to connect compatibly with both hemispheres. In the male, the intuitive logic, and same in the female. So a lot of the women would go into their deep female side or their male side to combat something that they considered to be a threat. Now, I'm just talking randomly at the moment, but if you get the hemispheres understanding that there is a beautiful intuitive ability of the woman who also has a logical side, but it's different, and that practical required by the male, practical logical side to do different things and do this or that or the other. But it's coupled with the understanding that the feminine side is intuitive and knows a lot more about nurturing, etc., etc. And so that male that's able to bring that into their awareness will be bringing their hemispheres into balance. I think the yogis call it holosync. It takes a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, you're actually starting to bring yourself into balance with what? Intuitive logic.
Mm-hmm. Intuitive
logic.
Yes.
It's not that logic where if you give this or you do that and you've done as much as you can for this person and you've actually sacrificed, right? It's not going to create harmony, is it? It doesn't, because it's giving too much. It can be making that person feel over entitled or dependent or disempowered, right? Because you're fixing up everything for them. There's so much in this whole thing about programming and the false logic of the subconscious mind. It's been weaponized against us, right?
Yeah.
Why? So we can be controlled, so that we'll react. And a lot of times so we'll be compliant.
Yes.
We want to know what we want to comply with. Do we want to comply with intuitive logic and understanding, being the observer, or do we want to comply with the reaction? So then it's like, okay, what do I need to do to bring balance into myself so that I can be happy, so that I can be at peace? I value peace. I truly value peace. Sometimes I don't feel that happen because I see a lot of destructive stuff.
Yeah.
So you jump in when you feel I need to
No,
change
well, I
something.
was going to say that as well. Well, I want to touch on unity. Like the thing is at the moment is encouraging people to like whatever's happened, and then encouraging the healing and the transformation of the individual. But
Okay.
I think the other thing that's there as well is the interesting thing, and a lot of people have communicated frustration, particularly at the level of their family, and then also with like wanting to point out some of the things, and I've been guilty of it myself, pointing out things that are obvious and having
You.
experience of communicating with people and they're looking at you and like even nodding their head, but like there's nothing that's sort of like actually really gotten in there, Greg. And then they just sort of continue on. Like that's the sophistication with the level of the programming. And I just don't know what's, like I said, splitting it up into like what's intergenerational, what's learnt in this lifetime, and then like what's actually being projected onto us externally.
Well, you're responsible for yourself. Those other individuals, they need to be responsible for themselves because that's the evolution of the human soul.
Mm-hmm. Ultimately, that's sovereignty, right?
That's it. It's
Personal
definitely
responsibility.
sovereignty. Yeah. So we need to be able to realize that some people will not be responsible for themselves because their program doesn't allow it. They prefer to do victimhood or to try and be more of service to self by taking from others, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we need to accept the fact that they're programmed to do so. It's not our job to change that. It's our job to make sure that we're not drawn into conflict because of their programming. So when we respond to them, we can speak our truth
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what's acceptable for us or what's not acceptable for us, or what we feel is injustice or unfair from that resolute place within yourself. And that's what we do for ourselves mainly. And then that is what we give to them. If they listen, fine. If they don't, fine. But that vibration is very powerful. When you're in stillness and you're speaking about what you consider to be fair and just, then you're able to be heard more easily than if you're angry and frustrated and you're reacting.
Mm-hmm.
Because their human energy field doesn't sense an attack. They're sensing the frequency of what you consider to be acceptable, right? It's not a judgment. It's how it's affecting you, right, in your reality. Now, this will be hard for people to figure out without going into the experience of seeing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to entertain it and start to understand it, to open up the possibility that we have this ability to be able to come from that place that's neutral in that respect, where our energy field, because it's not judging, it's actually not attacking, but it is expressing what's not acceptable. That's pretty important because then that person has the opportunity at that level to go, and this is frequency level, to go, I might have to look at that. They might say that, depending on how much they're affected by all the things that go on around them or their programming. So we're needing to realise that it's not our job to convince somebody about something. It's our job to express what we consider to be in our reality acceptable or not acceptable in our world, right? Now, we can talk about that, but we need to action that feeling behind that. It's how you deliver it, right?
Okay.
I was working with a little 15-year-old girl about, it would have been 15 years ago, probably, or a long time ago. And she was really angry about the injustice towards animals and all the rest of it. Her mum had said it because her mum knew what I did.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm really, really angry. And I got a guide came in and spoke to me and said, look, justice is being able to express your feelings and your needs and then listen to whoever you're interacting with. He didn't say whoever, he said, or listen to the feelings and the needs of others. But this was to do with justice, right? And it was brought in that situation. And I saw it very important that is justice, because you're balancing things out by understanding the needs and feelings of another while you're taking into account the feelings of your needs and your feelings.
Yeah.
So that might not sound that important to a lot of people, but it really stuck in my understanding of what justice is. Justice is being able to express yourself. On another level, well, the world needs to change incredibly because there's no real justice in it and there's no equality in it. So if we have to bring it in within ourselves to create unity consciousness. And that's what I was just talking about then. Because you look at all the different cultures and the way that those cultures interact and what their ideas of correct, if you like, do the right thing, it varies. We need to be able to, as we come together as a species, and also as we come to interact with ETs, benevolent ones, right, that are going to come into our sphere of reference more clearly, we don't need to be in shock, or we don't need to feel that there's somebody with authority over us. We need to be able to interact with equality, feeling equal, because we're a life form that's quite powerful in life. I know we are, because I know that we can get rid of dark entities, dark implants. We can dissolve that. We have that power when we're connected, because we can always ask for help if it's a bit beyond our sphere of reference, which it is with me a lot of the time.
Yes.
So unity consciousness is really a big thing, but it has to be done in the individual first. So for the humanity, and I know people are talking about this in every direction now, and it's fantastic, but I'm just saying it from my point of reference, in my experience of seeing people actually start to use their higher self to edit out trauma out of their memory timeline, and to actually be able to identify the falsity of what they're being approached with, or the sincerity with which they're being approached with. Because that's our ability. We're interdimensional beings. We need to be able to use that ability to communicate with. That's the only communication there is. Reaction is not a communication. And there's an expectation there that people will actually understand us. Well, forget that. You've got to understand yourself. Because people don't understand us because they can't. I mean, they will to a degree. But I'm talking about at depth, right? Because each individual has a different set of references of what they believe about themselves, or what they expect for themselves. So I can go in depth, but
it's great. We've got a few questions here as well, and we want to sort of keep it in under the hour. So I'll ask you a few more questions, and then I want to talk to you a bit more about unity consciousness as well, because a lot of people are not invested in a creationary conversation. They're just an anti, in opposition. And it's an opportunity for us as a collective, or as the individual, to start entering this phase for this quantum leap in evolution, or the great awakening, or whatever you want to call it in that regard, for people to start getting engaged in the conversation for what they want to create, rather than just being an anti-position, which is, you ask a lot of people about what are you creating, what do you want? And most people just say, not that. Yes. But Evan has a question here for you as well, Greg, and that's that how far back have you discovered the programming goes? Previous lives carried forward also?
Absolutely. All of the above. You've got your previous lives, you've got your early childhood, and as this man is talking about, you've got trauma down the ancestral line. Now, I think the Native American Indians knew that one lifetime could affect the next 7 or 8. The Buddhists have it, I think it's around about 12. Well, it's true. So if there's an event where there's extreme trauma, that gets stored in the DNA. So, or there's a real dark imprint because somebody's using sorcery or witchcraft to harm others, that'll be in the line too. So sometimes we'll come across that after initial reaction removal, and when a person is ready to face that and let it go, because it's only because they were deceived. So it, in answer to, sorry, what was the man's name?
Evan.
Evan.
Yes. In
answer to Evan's question, most definitely, and with the energies that are purging us at the moment from the central sun into the our father's sun, if you like, into the Earth Mother, we've got a lot of energies purging us of DNA toxins, toxic thought, toxic events, toxic feelings.
Yes.
And it's confusing us a bit because we're thinking it's a negative influence. And there is a negative influence, but there is also this purging going on. And it's clearing a lot of that stuff, the memory stuff that's sitting in the DNA. Massive storehouse of all the information of your bloodline.
Yeah.
That's why the dark ones don't want their bloodline changed. They want to be able to have no empathy in their bloodline.
Yes.
No.
Cold-blooded.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to have the conversation as well and just go where you need to with it as well, Greg, and then we'll jump into some questions, etc. But in relation to unity, like unity starting at the level of self, so the healing of the trauma, the centeredness, the groundedness, the beingness, and then needing to do it at the level of the self before it becomes into the collective. Like, can you give us an indication of, like, create the picture of what we're potentially moving into? And there's other concepts there there's multiple timelines running simultaneously, or multiverses, or whatever you want to call it. But, like, what does the future in unity look like? Because I don't think, perhaps maybe even some odd occasions in my remote childhood away from technology and EMFs and all that sort of thing, like, what does that experience of the collective in unity look like, about, like, what's possible for the future?
Well, I think you have a more powerful influence than what we realise when we bring ourselves into balance. When we are an expression of that beautiful energy of empathy, compassion, and understanding, I think we contribute a lot more than what we realise to group consciousness. And we affect group consciousness because a lot of humans are gritting off that are unaware. But you enter that, this is my understanding, you enter that into group consciousness, I think it has a major effect. And then, of course, your presence in certain situations will do the same thing. So your contribution and what I see is the potential for people to actually be able to manifest their creative gifts when they're in harmony. I've seen a young lady do hand mandalas freehand, and yet she can't live in this world, in 3D reality. She's too super sensitive. And there are so many super sensitives out there that are affected by the negative energies and the toxins. And the dark ones know that too. And so they get targeted from the astral plane and in other ways with food, etc. But coming back to what you're saying, I think the most important thing in terms of the contribution of us for unity consciousness is to be that, the beingness. And you look at all the great ones that came and people read about them and were truly in awe of their incredible connectedness to prime creator, God, if you like, not the lesser gods or the false gods, but the real essence of the original universal empathy, compassion, unconditional love, which is present now. So being a part of that, being an expression of that, is, guess what? It's your natural state. It's how you are supposed to feel. So we have to work at it to regain it, because we've been divided to be conquered. And our hemispheres were divided. Our families have been divided. The male and the female was divided. Cultures were divided, one against the other. And so you had Genghis Khan and the Romans, and I'm sure they were all affected by a lot of negativity, because there was always somebody wanting to rule the world. Why? What's the benefit? To have all of them see you as the supreme leader? It's just a massive dark ego situation.
Yes.
So we've had a lot of that. Now, there has been so many civilizations been attacked by other civilizations that's imprinted. So survival mentality comes from all of that.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's in there, and there's your judgment of good and bad, right and wrong. And we need to be able to see things in terms of harmony or disharmony. And therefore, you don't go into judgment when you're looking at that. You go into a response to keep yourself in harmony to the best that you can. It's a work in progress for all of us in one sense.
It is definitely a work in progress, because that's, whatever occurs, particularly of the onslaught of social media and fifth generation technology or psychological warfare, is that the trigger is there for people to go into a polarizing position, either pro or anti, for or against. It's designed as a continually highly sophisticated divide and conquer separationist agenda. And it's like, it definitely takes something to master that.
Yeah, it takes you. It takes your true self. It takes beingness, right? That's what it takes, though. This is the simple thing about it that we need to realize for ourselves. We carry that power to be in beingness, because you're not then being drawn, things are being drawn from the past in your programming to be introduced into this moment in time. Well, how's that going to resolve the situation? That's just only protocol to keep yourself alive, maybe. It's not protocol to live your life and create harmony and balance and create some sort of a communication that will allow you to see the differences but not judge, see the differences, and then come to some sort of an agreement as to how to proceed in the relationship, or whether it's a family, a community, a country, whatever. So to me, we're trying to combat the division that they're throwing at us every time based on fear of survival. And to be in the moment, and we really have to work at this because of all of what you just expressed. So we need to be in nature, because we are part of that. And the frequency of that, when you're sitting still, are you in the past? No. Are you in the future? No, you don't have to be. Are you looking at the flowers around you, the color of the grass, the way the wind is moving the branches, the different life forms that may be there, and the birds or the animals? You're observing them, and you feel. What do you feel? Peace.
Yeah.
That's your natural frequency, because you're part of that.
Yes.
So we need to be able to have that as where we need to go to, but not be in fear of all that's being thrown at us. So that's only the result. When you start to look at your programming and you start to center yourself and realize who and what you are, that you can actually start to relax more with the way you communicate. And plenty of people can. They've already done the work. And I'm not saying I'm presenting anything new. I'm not. But I see that this is so vitally important to recognise that this is a major obstacle for us to creating peace, to creating harmony in our environment, when the thought processes are designed to create division and disharmony.
Yes.
Us recognising that is a pretty big thing, because then we can go, well, what do I want to comply with? Where do I want to place my focus, etc.?
Yeah. Yeah. I just got to share with you as well. There's been a couple of occasions, and it's the exception rather than the normal, but I'm working towards in that direction as well, is being able to get as clear as possible in the now as possible. And I've had absolutely transformative experiences with other people just by being present, without having to say anything, without having to do anything. But, with the external stimulus, it does take a practice and a mastery to get to that point in time. And I've just spent a week in nature, which has been fantastic. So I'm sort of back to that place to a certain degree now, but definitely overstimulated and distracted and stressed, particularly in the city environments and that sort of thing as well. So,
yeah, because there's triggers in the subconscious that'll, like a jukebox, right? There's a trigger in the subconscious that will bring forward and introduce a program for whatever situation you're in, because there's many different types of programs, right? So it's our understanding. We need to have the understanding of triggers in our environment, and then actually practice letting go of the reaction if it comes into our mind, because that's mind control. That's not who you are. That's a mind control thing that was developed and used. They've programmed our subconscious to be weaponized.
yes.
Right? And you know this, and we said that before. But yes, what you said is so true, and you've experienced it, and so many others have experienced it. When you're in that still place and you're communicating, it's a totally different interaction.
Yes.
And that just says it all. That's the validation. So then we really go, well, if I can do that there from that situation, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'm still going to be okay, because I'm not going to take it on. I'm not going to take on those lower frequencies, although you won't stay there that long because you don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
I go into places where there's very dark beings and very dark energies, only to have them removed with the help that I have from interdimensional beings.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't try and do anything on my own, nor do I claim it, because it's done by those in service to Prime Creator to bring about the shift that we need to go through, the original evolutionary process that the human species was supposed to be able to go through until it was interfered with.
Yes. Yeah. So before we go to any questions, Greg, is there anything else that you wanted to share in closing? How do people reach you? How do you work? Anything in that regard in closing before we open up to the private questions in the community?
Thank you. I have a website, and it's a simple website. It's gregsimmons.com.au, and I've expressed in a limited way what I expressed today. But what I would like to do, and what I hope comes, is that there'll be a group of individuals that want to create a centre for consciousness awareness, not for the normal stuff, but for this stuff, for the traumatized beings that have got a lot of trauma and a lot of fracture, because they, by design, fractured the psyche of a lot of sensitives early in their life because they could, and they knew the signature of that human as they came in, that soul as they came in. So there's a lot of fractures there. Because when I've work with people to release certain things, I've got them, once they can use their conscious awareness and read things interdimensionally, I've asked them to have a look at what was attached to that person that was actually being invasive to you or was attacking you. And they will see a dark shape, or they will see a dark energy attached. Why? Because that person was at that time doing things that they shouldn't have done, but they're vulnerable for influence. The same as going into a nightclub, getting drunk. I don't know how many times I've shifted dark entities off people that have been to nightclubs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or also, yeah, you speak.
No, I was going to say also other people that I know of that have had like spiritual emergences that have been shut down, by pharmaceuticals and that sort of thing as well, to suppress the spiritual emergence of gifts that people have coming through. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
ADHD and all of those things need to be dealt with in a way of consciousness. Why is this person this way? Because a lot of the time they're not interested in being in 3D.
Yeah.
Because they've come in for the big event. They've come into our humanity. They're not here to be, if you like, comply with 3D reality.
Yeah, yeah. Sweating the small stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so do they fit in? No, of course not. Are they going to? No, of course not. And that's why I say to people, don't try and fit in, because I see this a lot of the time. I feel, and I see there's all sorts of issues, like when a mother is feeling really traumatized, she's carrying a child, the child's ungrounded. The child comes into the world ungrounded. Why? Because it's not a safe place in their understanding. So there's a lot of things around that. There's insecurities around not being able to be grounded, which means that it's not a safe place, which means it's hard to connect to the Earth Mother and her energies, all of this stuff. But they can, but they'll still have this lingering difficulty of being ungrounded or not knowing where they fit in and all the rest of it. That's really common.
Yes.
So common. And then to let it go is so freeing.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes work.
Yeah.
The individual, and it's supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nobody has a right to actually, I don't have a right to tell people how to do what they do. I don't have a right.
Yeah.
And I know that. It's not my right as a being. They need to make their own decisions from a wiser place. And that's what I try.
That's true. And then that works conversely in the negative about these dark forces and the spiritual war that we're experiencing at the moment, and that they need to be able to do it by be able to get a covenant or consent by complicity.
Yeah, you got it. And that's that compliance that we were talking about earlier on with survival or lies and deceit. Manufacturing consent to do things on a country basis to another country when it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
It's all lies. And how often has that been played? So often.
A lot.
Or the false flags that have been created for the same reason. False flags everywhere, all around the world.
Yes.
Misinformation, the dark ones that you mentioned. So we need to be aware of those things too. There's so much we need to be aware of, but not drawn into fear over. Because we know where we're going.
This is great. And I know we're sort of running out of time as well, but that sort of touches on that as well. There's a lot of people that are obviously in our community and the truth and the freedom and the conspiratorial aspects. And then there's the dark aspect of that and the three, letter organizations and that sort of thing as well. I was listening to an interview in the last week that the CIA had been involved, like it was talking about assassination attempts, had been involved in like over 70 assassination scenarios since I think the Second World War in the world. So
I reckon that'd be an incredible underestimate.
That's probably just the disclosed ones, Greg. But it's been great. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to close out the stream part of it. I know there's a lot of people here that'll have questions for you in that regard. So I'm just going to stop this part. Thank you for listening up to this point. So thank you for joining us. Okay, great. So I know there's some people in here that that's hour went super fast, and I meant to only go 45 minutes, but here we are nonetheless. So if there's anyone here that's listening in that's got any questions for Greg, just either type them in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and jump in and ask any questions. Um, I've spent hours with Greg, and it's just he's an incredible human being and contribution to humanity. So yeah, if any of you have any questions there, feel free to unmute yourself or jump in, type it in the chat.
Oh, the yak, Paul?
Yeah, mate, go for it. Hey, Evan, how you doing? Good to
Yeah,
see
good,
you.
buddy. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, Greg, just wondering when you're saying before about the sensitives when they come in, are you talking about when they're coming into the world?
Yes.
Or are you talking about, so how do they pick up who a sensitive is?
I think everybody's got a signature, and this has been something that they've been aware of with their technologies for a lot. I'm talking about the Anunnaki now,
Yeah,
from
yeah.
way back, who then guided other darker beings to be able to utilize and understand the different sensitives as they're recycled a lot of the time into a new life. This is just my take.
Yeah.
And so we've all got a signature. Our DNA's got a signature. So for those who are going to be the greatest opposition, the sensitives, a lot of the time they're fractured with fear-based situations when they first come in, or a few years later when they're in their early 7 years, where they're trying to imprint how to present themselves in this reality, right? All of that's stored in that first 7 years. So to me, they had the technology for all sorts of things, including mind wipes, as you would have read about. And I know that they could track us. But I also know that if you carry no fear, etc., you look at David Icke. Should he have been assassinated? Probably. He called him out from day dot. He's still
Like
not.
100 fucking times.
That's it. And Icke, he's fine because he believes he's not going to. He's not at that level that they can touch him, and I believe him. That belief is powerful. And one of the things that I wasn't able to cover then is belief systems are really important. So if you're coming into a family with a lot of trauma in it, you're inheriting those, and then certain types of beliefs can be intensified, negative beliefs can be intensified when you're a kid, either by the action of the parent that's carrying that trauma too, and then it just gets handed down the line. But yes, they know who we are. The dark. They always did. And you know what? They know we're coming for them.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think some people were speculating as well, Greg, now we've finished, but we can have a bit more of a real level of conversation, that they were saying that the DNA profiling of people in relation to DNA testing or DNA sampling was to actually profile the individuals they're looking for, the star seeds and that sort of thing in that regard.
And this is on the physical level.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a lot operating on the physical level, and we've got those operating in that lower fourth dimensional reality, which is being cleaned out as they come down through the dimensions, cleaning out now. The light is coming through in a very powerful way, I believe. So what's in the lower astral plane is still operating with less opposition, if you like. So I look for it whenever I work. I'll look for implants, etheric implants, which are broadcasting and intensifying a program. Yeah, connected etherically, and the loosh goes up the line. So we can actually dematerialize them with light. We can send light up the line to disintegrate what's up the top of that line. What do? Are we attacking? No, we're using light. What does light do? Harmonizes. What does darkness cannot stand is harmony. So I lost where I am a bit. because my mind goes random. Sometimes there's so many things that come in all at once about certain things.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
Great. Thanks. Great question, Evan. Thank you so much. I got to meet Deepak Chopra when he was in Dubai in about mid 2000s, I think it was, when, sort of before he was compromised. He was promoted the jab. Now he's promoting AI at the moment. So it's super interesting. But one of the things he said back at that point in time was that, and I've had my journey around addiction and substance, and a lot of it was around the mind. It's like the thinking and not trying to stop the thinking, Greg. And one of the quotes that he stuck with me right back when the essence of his message was a lot purer was that those that were like in those addictive cycles were actually closer to the divine because they were in the searching.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why non-judgment is required when you're dealing with people with issues of that sort. Non-judgment, because judgment can actually stop you from connecting and having the empathy and compassion, and if need to, be supportive, if need to, but definitely not trying to rescue.
Yeah.
So your recognition of what you just said is perfect, that you're actually in pain.
Yeah. Plus some form of suffering as well. And that's like people that are artistically inclined, there's this sort of collective agreement that you have to suffer to create great art, Greg.
That's what pain is.
Looking at your frog painting on the wall there as well.
Well, that was done by my wife's daughter, my stepdaughter, and she did that freehand.
Wow. Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, she'd love it.
Okay, Catherine's here. I just want to acknowledge Catherine and Greg as well for connecting us as well, Greg.
Cool.
Thank you for their contribution and connecting us. Thank you, Catherine and Greg.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Greg.
Well, thank you. I've actually just raised my hand to say thank you both for this amazing, powerful. I could just feel so much when you were speaking, Greg, and you've both really supported us as well to come into unity consciousness and have an amazing life and to understand really what sovereignty is and to find that peace, Greg. And you really, expressed it so well to be able to come into that. And of course, we're not always in it, but when we've got those, strategies or ways of finding that again, and you really, your frequency, both of you, is really powerful and beautiful. So I thank you, and I thank everybody on this call as well.
Yeah, I do also. Wonderful. I could go another couple of hours. This was absolutely brilliant. Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Paul.
Let's create that center, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this is who you are, and that you're only resonating with what you already know.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you for your beautiful compliments. Yeah.
So I'm just going to check and see if anyone else. Thanks, Catherine and Greg. If there's anyone else that's got any questions, if you want to type them in the chat, or if you want to feel free to ask Greg as well. I'm just conscious of time here as well. If there's anyone else that's got anything else that you wanted to ask, or any feedback or anything at all, or what you got out of the session with Greg. But it's been a beautiful and certainly an uncommon conversation, but certainly something that we need to be engaged more in, I think, Greg. So thank you for what you're contributing to us and to humanity. And it's an uncommon conversation for unprecedented times.
Yeah.
I thank you.
Sorry, Greg.
You're right, Evan.
I was just going to say, just increasingly lately, the last 4 years, I suppose, since finding more pockets of people who, just doing these sort of things. I don't know how to explain it really, but I just spent, I was in Egypt with Tyler for 2 weeks in May. But he's come miles in the last 10 years himself. So everyone he's sort of doing, they're all coming together at the same point down the road somewhere, but we're all doing different things to get there. And there's a lot of people doing it, you know. And everyone's got their aspect of the way that they're getting there and stuff, which would help everybody else if the communities could all come together at some point. So it's very, I don't know how that's going to happen, but there's a lot of people out there. There's a guy on Instagram too called Ari Malloy. He's 20 years old, and this guy is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Aramisu Malloy, his name is Ari Malloy. But man, he is brilliant. He's really tapped in. He's 20. He lives in Costa Rica. But some of the stuff he posts is just amazing. You know, digging into all the dark stuff and exposing all that, and plus what he does spiritually for himself and other people. Yeah. For instance, you know, then there's Tyler, and Don's taken a bit of a back seat, but he's starting to come out again now. He's living in Bali. And you know, heaps of other people. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting before Greg comments as well, just from my point of view, Evan, it's a great point. And I think that, you know, they're talking about the technology or the digital aspect and the AI like running to a point of singularity. I think as far as consciousness is concerned as well, there's that darkness aspect, but it's also driving up the light, as they said in these times prior to us entering a golden age, like the duality of like the greater the darkness, the greater the light. And I think and this might be part of the concept that intertwines well with the concept of us reaching a point of singularity as well, but also the quantum shift between the third and the fifth dimension. And for me, not that I don't have any intellectual knowledge about it, but from an experiential level, that's like, you know, once we start to infuse the embodiment of the individual, that's when the shift really the good shift starts to hit the fan.
Yeah. I was thinking too, right? What Greg or whichever one of you was saying before about David Icke moving in that sphere, and you know, it was you, Greg, when you're answering something that I said. But Paul, do you think Dave used to also operate at a certain level like that? Because how many times did they try to bump him off? Like 70 something was up to account, but they never got him either. But he always had that wavelength as well.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. I've interviewed David Icke a couple of times over the years as well, and in the conversation, he goes into a lot of detail. And I re-released the last version because the last 2 YouTube channels that we had got deleted, and the Facebook group got deleted. But where he talks about Watiko in detail, but I think he's definitely had stages, and he's able to, and I mean, he's been doing a long time, 35, nearly 40 years, but trying to, or like not trying, but elevating your frequency as much as you possibly can in your energetic body with your health and your well-being and your mind, body, mind, spirit, to some degree, and I've had experiences of this, that those lower frequencies can't see you.
Yeah.
And I think Greg might have something to say about that as well. But like, it's just like you're like a ghost walking in the machine with them. Like they can't see you or feel you for some reason. And it's like that energetic pull is like trying to pull you back down into the old cliche, do not engage with lower frequencies. But do you want to say anything about that, and Greg, in closing?
Look, I think it's incredible that so many people are actually doing their thing. And this is what we were talking about before with the creativity of individuals as they present themselves as the fractal of Prime Creator. Then they're going to have these incredible individual ways of expressing how to overcome what needs to be overcome. And it's magnificent. So the more of that, the better. The other thing about, yes, I believe what you're saying to be true, Paul, as well, that they tend not to see, but there's another thing that they do see you and they avoid you.
Right.
Because your frequency is a danger to them. Because sometimes if they try to violate something at that level, they're gone. They will be taken, right? And if because I've had plenty of experiences where they confront, and they have told me all sorts of things. They use incredible language, worse than the language I used to use, at me.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden they realise that there's a backup there. There are light beings, lion beings, guides, etc., that will remove them and send them to where they need to be taken to. And I leave that always to the light, because the light knows where they got to go, whether they've got to be disintegrated or whatever. If it's an earthbound, I'll call in those that guide the earthbounds to back to where they need to be able to regenerate and start their evolution again.
Yes.
Or anything like that, where there's energy stuck in the ether in a house, where there's a vortex, where there's been a mass murder or a killing, then there's stuck spirits in that vortex. I just used to go, I don't have to stand in it now. I've learned how to do it remote. You can release all the stuck spirits and get rid of the dark ones out of that vortex and that portal, and then close it down with light. You can do it with your imagination, whichever way. If you're comfortable and you believe, you can shut it down by exploding light all the way up that portal so it can't open again. I've thrown fairy dust on people. I'm laughing at myself here, right? I will ask the fairies to come and help the little children that have been traumatized by energy in a house. And guess what? They come.
Yeah.
Because they're real and they will help a child, the fairies. So all those things are there to be able to assist humanity to be able to realise they are part of a multidimensional understanding of light, if I can put it that way.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we can, our imagination, like Einstein said, just use your imagination. If you have a belief, it'll happen. The problem is those beliefs that are negative, we need to get rid of, because they're creating situations for us because we have a belief about them. I'm not good enough. I'm this, I'm that. I'm not acceptable. I am unlovable. I've heard these all so many times. And they're all programs because the parent or the carer didn't have the time or the ability, because they were fractured, to be able to give that child their time, their attention, for that child to be able to feel acceptable, for that child to be able to feel lovable. I've seen these things all the time, all the time. They're fractures. And it comes back to the dark. Do they see us? Well, they see us all right, but they'll give us a wide berth if they think we're I could tell you some funny stories around all that stuff, but we haven't got time for that.
Yeah. No, it's great. So I'm going to send out the copy of the recording to everyone that's on this Zoom that's registered. So you get a copy, so you get to watch it back in your own time again as well. And I'll also post the link for your website for gregsimmons.com.au in the recording, Greg. So I do appreciate your time today and what you do. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the fact that you have the knowledge and the wisdom and the consciousness that you do, and you're able to express with it, and therefore assist and support other humans to be able to understand their reality to a greater depth of what a lot of them do at this point in time. And thank you for all those in the chat room.
Yes.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you for everybody that's supporting us in this quest for understanding of how to be.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Paul.
everyone.
Can't thank you enough.
My pleasure. Have a blessed week, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Seilsy. Good on you, mate.
Much love.
Much love. Thank you.
Yep.
Bye-bye.